going on, guys? I'm Mr. Hart here, and today we're going to talk about graphing linear equations. So first of all, the easiest way to graph an equation is whenever it is in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. So for problem number 1 here, we have y equals 2x minus 3. So we want to identify what is our m and what is our b. So our m is whatever number is always next to x, which in this case is 2. But whenever we graph, we need it to be in rise over run form. So what we can do to 2 to keep the value the same, but make it a fraction, is we can make 2 over 1. And that way it's in a form that we're familiar with for rise over run. Then our b is always going to be our number that's by itself, which in this case is negative 3. So if we're going to graph this, we want to pick out the one point that we know for sure on the graph. Since my b is negative 3 and that's my y-intercept, even if I don't know anything else about the graph, I know that my line is going to cross the y-axis at negative 3. So now from negative 3, I'm going to use my slope to figure out what my next point is. So since this is rise over run and it's positive, I'm going to go up 2 and then I'm going to go over 1 and make a point. Now what I like to do is I like to take up the majority of the graph just so we can really see what that line looks like. So I'll go up 2 again, over 1, up 2 again, over 1. Then if I want to put some over here on the left-hand side, we just do the opposite. So instead of up 2, right 1, we're going to go down 2, left 1. I draw my line. Should be a straight line. And that is y equals 2x minus 3. Now, if we want to see an example of another type, we have y equals negative 1/2 x. So again, I want to label what is my m and what is my b. So here my m is negative, so I have negative 1/2. And since that is a fraction already, I don't need to put it over 1. It's good to go. It's already rise over run. Then your b is whatever is after the x. In this case, we have nothing, so the number that represents nothing is 0. So I'm going to put my b as 0, and 0 on the y-axis is at the origin. So I'm going to start here at 0, and then I'm going to do my rise over run. What I always like to say is let the negative tell you up or down, and then always just go right for your second point. So I'm going to start at 0. Since my rise is a negative 1, I'm going to go down 1, and then my run is a positive 2, so I'm going to go to the right 2. Again, I want to see what this line really looks like, so I'm going to do it a couple more times. And if I want to put some over here, I'll just do the opposite. So instead of down 1, right 2, I'm going to go up 1, left 2, make a point, draw my line. It's always good practice to label the equation. And now you know more.
Hey guys, it's Ms. Garner. I'm going to do 2 more examples of plotting our lines on our graph given a linear equation. So for number 3, we have y equals 3/2 x minus 4. The first thing I always look for is my y-intercept. So in this problem, I know my y-intercept is the number that's by itself. It does not have the x. So I'm going to circle my negative 4, remembering that it keeps the sign that's in front of it, so it's negative. So on my graph, I'm going to go, it's a y-intercept, so it's got to be on the y-axis. So on the y-axis, I'm going to go down to negative 4, and that's going to be my first point. Now that I have my first point, I only need one other point in order to form a line. So I'm going to use my slope of 3/2. So slope equals 3/2. Slope is the same thing as rise over run. So I know in this case, I'm going to rise 3 and then run 2. So from the point I just started at, I'm going to go up 3 and then right 2. So I always say to always go to the right. You can always go either up and to the right or down and to the right. The only time you would have to go to the left is for some reason if you're at the very edge of your graph. But in most cases, you can just remember always go right. So now that I have my 2 lines, I'm able to connect these with a straight line, remembering that my line goes to infinity in both directions. So remember, if we only connect our 2 points, that would just be a segment. We want to make sure this is an entire line, so we draw it all the way through. So this is y equals 3/2 x minus 4. For our second problem, y equals negative x plus 2, I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to look for my y-intercept. So the number that's all by itself, it is usually here at the back, is positive 2. So I'm going to go to my y-axis and put a point at positive 2. Now I'm going to look for my slope. I don't see a number in front of my x, but I know if there's no number there, that's really an invisible 1. So you can think of this as an invisible 1. So my slope in this case is going to be -1. We have to know that if it's not a fraction to begin with, you always just go sideways 1 unit. So this is because -1 is the same thing as saying -1 over 1. If you divide a number by 1, it's the same thing. So from our point here, it's -1, so I'm going to go down 1 over 1. And I'm going to do that a couple times. Down 1 over 1. Now that I have my points, I'll connect them with a straight line, putting my arrowheads on either side and labeling my line y equals -x plus 2. So just to recap, you're going to first plot your y-intercept, that is always your starting point, and then you're going to use your slope to find your second point. If it's a positive slope, you go up and to the right. If it's negative in this case, you'll go down and to the right. And now you know.